Greetings, friends. Today I need to share something very personal with you. Last month I ended up in the hospital, and what happened to me could happen to anyone watching this video. Leave a comment saying, health, if you want to hear about the wake-up call that completely changed how I think about success, work, and life. It was a normal Tuesday morning. I was sitting in my office, going through emails like I do every single day. Suddenly, the room started spinning. The words on my computer screen blurred together. I felt like I was going to be sick. At first, I thought it was just fatigue. You see, I had been working 18-hour days for 3 months straight. I was sleeping maybe 4 hours a night. I was eating whatever was convenient, usually just coffee and whatever someone brought to meetings. But this time something was different. Something was seriously wrong. I tried to stand up from my chair, but my legs wouldn't support me. My heart was racing so fast I could hear it pounding in my ears. I couldn't catch my breath. There was this crushing feeling in my chest, like someone was sitting on me. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I reached for my phone to call for help, but I couldn't make my fingers work properly. The simple act of dialing a number became impossible because I couldn't focus my eyes or control my movements. My assistant found me slumped over my desk 10 minutes later. She took one look at me and immediately called an ambulance. I tried to tell her I was fine, that I just needed a minute. But the words came out slurred and confused. I remember feeling embarrassed more than scared. Here I was, someone who prides himself on being in control, and I couldn't even speak clearly. Part of me was still thinking about the meetings I was supposed to have that afternoon. Can you believe it? Even in that condition, I was worried about work. Chapter 3. The Emergency. The paramedics arrived and immediately started checking my vital signs. My blood pressure was dangerously high, 180 over 120. My heart rate was erratic, jumping between racing and skipping beats. They said I was showing signs of severe exhaustion and stress-related complications that could lead to a heart attack or stroke. One of the paramedics, a woman probably in her 50s, looked me in the eye and said something I'll never forget. "Sir, your body is in crisis mode. We need to get you to the hospital immediately." That's when reality hit me. I wasn't invincible. I wasn't immune to the consequences of treating my body like a machine that could run indefinitely without maintenance. In the ambulance on the way to the hospital, I kept drifting in and out of consciousness. All I could think about was how stupid I'd been. Here I am, always talking about the importance of taking care of things, maintaining equipment, following safety protocols, planning for the long term. But I'd completely ignored those same principles when it came to my own health. I thought about my children, about all the things I still wanted to do with them. I thought about the people who depended on me, not just professionally, but personally. What if this had been worse? What if I'd had a heart attack at my desk and died because I was too stubborn to take care of myself? The emergency room was a blur of tests and questions, blood work, heart monitoring, brain scans to make sure I hadn't had a stroke. The medical team moved with the kind of urgency that made me realize how serious this was. The doctor who examined me was Dr. Sarah Chen, and she was brutally honest in a way that probably saved my life. "Mr. Musk," she said, "your body is shutting down. Your cortisol levels are through the roof. Your blood work shows you're severely dehydrated and malnourished. When was the last time you had a real meal or a full night's sleep?" I couldn't remember. That's how bad it had gotten. She pulled up my test results on her tablet and showed me numbers that meant nothing to me, but clearly alarmed her. "Your stress hormone levels are similar to what we see in soldiers coming back from combat zones. Your body thinks it's been under constant threat for months." Dr. Chen told me I was experiencing what's called acute stress reaction. Basically, my body's way of forcing me to stop before something worse happened. She said if I'd continued the way I was going, I could have had a heart attack or stroke within weeks. "You're 53 years old," she said. "Your body isn't 25 anymore. The recovery time from stress and sleep deprivation gets longer as you age. You can't keep running it into the ground and expect it to keep working." That hit me harder, than any business failure ever had. She explained something that nobody had ever told me clearly before. Stress isn't just feeling overwhelmed, it's a physical process that affects every organ in your body. When you're constantly stressed, your body produces hormones like cortisol and adrenaline that are meant to help you handle short-term emergencies. Dr. Chen drew a simple diagram showing how chronic stress affects the body. But when those stress hormones stay elevated for months, they start damaging your heart, your blood vessels, your immune system, your digestive system, even your brain. You become more prone to infections, injuries, depression, anxiety, and serious cardiovascular problems. She told me that people my age who maintain chronic high stress levels have significantly higher rates of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and early death. Think of it like running your car engine in the red zone, she said. You might get more speed temporarily, but you're destroying the engine. Eventually, it's going to break down completely. That analogy made sense to me in a way that all the previous warnings about work-life balance never had. I spent 3 days in the hospital. 3 days of forced rest, IV fluids to rehydrate me, proper meals brought on schedule, and a lot of time to think about what had brought me to that point. The first night was the hardest. I kept wanting to check my phone, to respond to messages, to stay connected to everything that seemed urgent. But the nurses had strict orders: no work, no stress, complete rest. By the second day, something strange started happening. For the first time in months, my mind felt clear. I could think about problems without feeling panicked. I could have conversations without constantly checking the time or thinking about what I needed to do next. It was like I'd been living in a fog of exhaustion and stress for so long that I'd forgotten what normal felt like. During my stay, I started talking to other patients and hospital staff about stress and overwork. What I discovered surprised me. Almost everyone had a story about pushing too hard and paying the price. Sometimes a minor price like constant exhaustion or frequent illnesses. Sometimes a major price like heart attacks, strokes, or severe depression. My roommate was a 62-year-old man named Frank who'd had a mild heart attack. He told me he'd been working 60-hour weeks for years as an accountant, convinced that he couldn't slow down until he retired. The funny thing is, Frank said, I thought I was being responsible by working so hard. I was providing for my family, building up savings for retirement, but what I was really doing was gambling with the years I'd have to enjoy retirement. Frank's heart attack had happened during tax season, his busiest time of year. He'd been working 16-hour days for 2 months, eating fast food at his desk, and sleeping 4 hours a night. My wife kept telling me to slow down, he said. My kids kept asking me to come to their games and concerts. I kept saying, after tax season, or after we finish this big project. But there was always another busy season, another big project. The morning of his heart attack, Frank had felt chest pain, but ignored it because he had client deadlines. It wasn't until the pain became unbearable that he finally went to the hospital. Now I'm looking at months of recovery and cardiac rehabilitation, he said. All those extra hours I worked, they don't matter now. My clients found other accountants. The world didn't end because I wasn't available, but my health almost did. This hit me really hard because I saw myself in Frank's story. I also met a nurse named Patricia who'd been working in the cardiac unit for 20 years. She told me that the majority of heart attack patients she sees are people between 50 and 65 who've been under chronic work stress. They all say the same thing, Patricia told me. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was tougher than that. I thought I had time to take care of my health later. She said that many of these patients are successful people, executives, doctors, lawyers, small business owners who've been rewarded their whole careers for working harder than everyone else. The problem is that the same drive that makes people successful can also kill them if they do not learn to manage it. Patricia explained, your body doesn't care how important your work is. It has limits. And when you exceed those limits consistently, it breaks down. Patricia shared something that really stuck with me. She said that the patients who recover best aren't necessarily the youngest or the healthiest. They're the ones who use their health scare as a wake-up call to change their entire approach to life. The patients who go right back to their old habits usually end up back here within a year or two, she said. But the ones who really change, who learn to prioritize their health, who set boundaries around work, who invest in relationships and hobbies, they often tell me later that their heart attack was the best thing that ever happened to them. That statement really made me think. Could this hospital visit actually be the best thing that ever happened to me? During my second day in the hospital, Dr. Chen brought in a cardiologist to explain the long-term risks I was facing if I didn't change my lifestyle. Dr. Rodriguez was probably in his 60s, and he spoke with the authority of someone who'd seen too many preventable tragedies. The human body is remarkably resilient, he said, but it's not infinitely resilient. Every day of chronic stress, poor sleep, and inadequate nutrition creates small amounts of damage throughout your system. Usually, that damage accumulates slowly and invisibly until suddenly it reaches a tipping point. He showed me charts of what happens to the cardiovascular system under chronic stress. Blood pressure rises. Arteries become inflamed. The heart works harder to pump blood through constricted vessels. Over time, this leads to heart disease, stroke, and organ failure. The good news, Dr. Rodriguez said, is that much of this damage is reversible if you make changes now. The bad news is that if you don't make changes, you're likely looking at serious cardiovascular events within the next few years. He told me about patients he'd treated who ignored warning signs like mine. Some had heart attacks in their 50s. Others had strokes that left them permanently disabled. Still others developed diabetes or other chronic conditions that dramatically reduced their quality of life. The tragedy, he said, is that most of these problems are preventable with lifestyle changes that aren't even that difficult. But people wait until they have a major health crisis to make those changes. And by then, it's often too late to prevent serious damage. This was my wake-up call. I couldn't ignore it anymore. On my third day in the hospital, I had a conversation that changed my perspective completely. Dr. Chen brought in a man named Robert, who was 78 years old and had experienced almost exactly what I was going through, but 23 years earlier. Robert looked incredible for his age, energetic, clear-eyed, moving with the confidence of someone much younger. He told me he'd been a workaholic executive who'd collapsed from stress and exhaustion at 55. "I was just like you," he said. "Thought I was invincible. Thought taking care of my health was something I could do later, after I finished building my career and providing for my family." Robert's collapse had been even more severe than mine. He'd actually had a mild heart attack and spent a week in intensive care. His doctors told him that if he didn't make dramatic changes, he probably wouldn't live to see 60. "That was my wake-up call," he said. "I realized I'd been so focused on building a successful life that I'd forgotten to actually live it." Robert made radical changes. He reduced his work hours, started exercising daily, learned to cook healthy meals, and began prioritizing sleep. He also started focusing on relationships and hobbies that brought him joy rather than just achievement. "The amazing thing," he said, "is that my work actually improved when I started taking care of my health. I had more energy, better focus, clearer thinking. I made better decisions because I wasn't constantly operating in crisis mode." Robert had been retired for 13 years but was still active and healthy. He volunteered, traveled with his wife, spent time with his grandchildren, and pursued interests he'd never had time for during his workaholic years. "I've had 23 extra years that I wouldn't have had if I'd continued on the path I was on," he said. 23 years of good health, good relationships, and genuine happiness. That heart attack was the best thing that ever happened to me because it forced me to learn what really matters. Robert's story gave me hope, but it also made me realize how much time I'd already wasted ignoring my health. I also met Margaret, a 67-year-old woman who'd been visiting her husband in the cardiac unit. She told me that she'd learned to prioritize her health after watching several friends and family members suffer serious health consequences from chronic stress. "I decided I wasn't going to wait for a crisis to make changes," she said. "I saw what happened to people who ignored their health, and I decided to be proactive instead of reactive." Margaret had developed what she called her non-negotiable health habits. She treated exercise, proper nutrition, and adequate sleep like any other important commitment, scheduled and protected. "I schedule my exercise, my meals, and my sleep just like I schedule meetings," she said. "They're not optional. They're not things I do if I have extra time. They're the foundation that makes everything else possible." Margaret explained that treating health as a priority rather than an afterthought had actually made her more productive and successful in other areas of life. "When I'm well rested and healthy, I can accomplish more in 6 focused hours than I used to accomplish in 10 exhausted hours." She also talked about how prioritizing her health had improved her relationships. "When I'm not constantly stressed and tired, I'm more patient with people. I listen better. I'm more present for the people I care about." These conversations made me realize that my hospital stay wasn't just about me. It was about the example I set for other people, especially younger people who might think that sacrificing health for success is admirable or necessary. It's not admirable, it's not necessary, and it's not sustainable. On my last day in the hospital, Dr. Chen gave me a comprehensive plan for recovery and prevention. But before she talked about diet and exercise and medication, she talked about mindset. "The biggest challenge you'll face," she said, "isn't following a diet or exercise program. It's changing the beliefs that got you here in the first place." She explained that many high-achieving people have what she called martyrdom thinking. The belief that suffering for work makes you more valuable, that sacrificing your health proves your dedication, that taking care of yourself is selfish or weak. "You need to understand that taking care of your health isn't selfish," Dr. Chen said. "It's responsible. It's how you ensure that you'll be able to contribute for the long term rather than burning out early." She gave me a different way to think about health maintenance. "Think of it as an investment, not an expense. The time and energy you put into staying healthy will be returned to you multiplied in better performance, clearer thinking, more energy, and more years of productive life." Dr. Chen also talked about the ripple effects of health choices. When you take care of your health, you're not just helping yourself. You're reducing the burden on your family. You're modeling good behaviors for younger people. You're ensuring you'll be available for people who depend on you. This perspective completely changed how I thought about self-care. Chapter 13. My New Life. The changes. Since leaving the hospital, I've made changes that I should have made years ago. But I want to be honest about how difficult it's been. Changing lifelong habits isn't easy, especially when those habits have been rewarded professionally and socially. The first change was sleep. I committed to sleeping 7 hours a night, no exceptions. This meant saying no to some late-night meetings and social events. It meant setting boundaries that felt uncomfortable at first, but the difference was almost immediate. After just 1 week of proper sleep, my thinking was clearer, my patience was better, and my energy was more consistent throughout the day. The second change was nutrition. Instead of surviving on coffee, snacks, and whatever was available in meetings, I started eating 3 real meals a day. I hired someone to help with meal planning and preparation because I knew I wouldn't maintain this change if it was complicated or time-consuming. The improvement in my energy and mood was remarkable. I hadn't realized how much my erratic eating patterns were affecting my mental clarity and emotional stability. The third change was exercise. I started with just 30 minutes of walking every morning. Nothing intense, nothing that required special equipment or gym memberships. Just a simple walk outside before starting work. This became my favorite part of the day. 30 minutes of quiet time to think, to notice the world around me, to transition from sleep to work in a healthy way. It gave me more energy for the rest of the day and helped me sleep better at night. The fourth change was boundaries. I stopped checking email after 8 p.m. and before 8 a.m. I blocked out time during the day for focused work without interruptions. I learned to delegate more effectively instead of trying to handle everything myself. These boundaries felt scary at first. I worried that people would think I was lazy or uncommitted, but the opposite happened. When I was more rested and focused during my working hours, I was actually more effective and valuable to the people I work with. Chapter 14. The Surprising Benefits. The most surprising change was in my relationships. When I wasn't constantly exhausted and stressed, I became more patient, more present, and more enjoyable to be around. My conversations with family and friends became deeper and more meaningful because I had the mental and emotional energy to really engage. But I want to be honest about the challenges, too. There are still days when I'm tempted to skip exercise or stay up late working on something that seems urgent. There are still times when I feel guilty for taking time to eat a proper meal or take a walk. The old patterns of thinking don't disappear overnight. Sometimes I catch myself falling back into the mindset that rest is lazy, that boundaries are selfish, that health can wait until later. But then I remember that day in my office when the room started spinning. I remember Frank in his hospital bed talking about all those hours that don't matter now. I remember Robert's 23 extra years of good health and happiness. What keeps me committed to these changes isn't just fear of another health crisis. It's the genuine improvement in my quality of life. I'm more productive now than I was when I was working 18-hour days. I make better decisions. I'm more creative. I enjoy my work more because I'm not constantly exhausted and resentful. My relationships have deepened in ways I didn't expect. When I'm present with people, really present instead of mentally going through my to-do list, the quality of connection is completely different. My children have noticed, my friends have noticed, even my colleagues have commented on the difference. Chapter 15. The Real Lesson. What I've learned through this experience is that health isn't something separate from success. It's the foundation of success. When you're healthy, well-rested, and properly nourished, everything else becomes easier. Your thinking is clearer. Your energy is more consistent. Your resilience is stronger. Your creativity flourishes. The myth that we have to choose between taking care of ourselves and being successful is just that, a myth. The truth is that neglecting your health ultimately makes you less successful. You make poorer decisions. You're more irritable with people. You're less creative. You're more prone to mistakes. And eventually, your body forces you to stop, whether you want to or not. I used to think that people who prioritized health and work-life balance were soft, that they lacked the drive to really achieve great things. Now I understand that the opposite is true. The people who maintain their health are the ones who can sustain high performance over the long term. They're the ones who are still making important contributions in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. They're the ones who actually get to enjoy the success they've worked for. Chapter 16. Conclusion. My message to you. Friends, I'm sharing this story not because I want sympathy, but because what happened to me could happen to anyone. If you're working long hours, sleeping too little, eating poorly, and telling yourself that you'll take care of your health later, please listen to this warning. Your body has limits, and when you exceed those limits consistently, it breaks down. The damage accumulates silently until suddenly it reaches a crisis point. By then, you might have done irreversible harm. Take care of yourself with the same attention and commitment you give to other important things in your life. Your future self will thank you, and the people who depend on you will benefit from having you healthy and present for years to come. Don't let pride or misguided dedication put you in a hospital bed. Don't learn this lesson the hard way like I did. Start today. Start with one small change. Maybe it's getting an extra hour of sleep tonight. Maybe it's eating one proper meal instead of working through lunch. Maybe it's taking a 15-minute walk before starting your workday. Whatever it is, start somewhere. Because your life might depend on it. If you found this video helpful, please share it with someone who might be pushing too hard and needs a reminder that their health matters more than any deadline. Leave a comment telling me, what's one change you could make this week to better take care of your health? Your example might inspire someone else to make that change too. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.